Hey, y'all, hope y'all are doing good. Thank you for tuning in. And I have another SEC preview and prediction. And this week, I've got the LSU Tigers. Last week, I did the Tennessee Vols. And guys, I'm going to try to do all 16 SEC teams to the best of my ability. But first, let's talk about LSU here. Let's break down what happened last year. 9-4 football team, 5-3 in the SEC. Was not a horrible season, but it did fail to meet expectations. The LSU fans are expecting more out of Brian Kelly. They're expecting more out of this football team. And I think they've got a better team this year than they did last year overall. And we're going to talk more about that. So let's talk about the good that happened last year. The good was offensively, they were 25th in total offense. And that was in large part because of that passing offense, which was 7th in the country, averaged 315 yards per game. Phenomenal. That is phenomenal. And another good thing that they did, they were 17th in sacks allowed. Emory Jones, Will Campbell, those two guys did a tremendous job, and the rest of the offensive line, tremendous job at protecting Garrett Nussmeier, basically only giving up about a sack a game. That's really, really good numbers, especially when you play in the SEC. Garrett Nussmeier threw for over 4,000 yards last year. That's good for 5th best in the country in passing yards. It's 10th best in passing TDs with 29. So he had a great year. Garrett Nussmeier was a very strong point on this team last year, and they get him back again this year. And that's huge for this team. When you have an elite QB, it just... you look at the 2019 LSU Tigers. Look what they had in Joe Burrow. Garrett Nussmeier is not that good, but he's a really good quarterback, and it helps your team immensely. So now let's talk about the bad that happened last year. That rush offense, 107th in the country. Only averaged 116 yards per game. Guys, that's not good enough. That's last in the SEC in rushing offense. And, they had to lean on that passing game. They could not run the football effectively, and it really held them back last year. It kept them from double-digit wins. Defense was not good as well. It did take a step forward, from 2023, but it's still not good enough to be in the top half of the SEC. When you're 61st in total defense, when you're 51st in rush defense, and you're 76th in passing defense, you're going to lose a lot of football games, especially in the SEC. And Garrett Nussmeier, he really bailed them out a lot last year. So let's talk about what Vegas thinks of LSU. Vegas thinks that LSU is about a 9-win team, and I agree with that. I think that's a pretty accurate. The one thing there's several things that are going to hurt them, but what's really going to hurt them, in my opinion, is that offensive line. They had a really good offensive line last year. They lose 4 guys off that offensive line that was starters, and the 2 main ones are Will Campbell and Emory Jones. Will Campbell was the first offensive line that was taken in the NFL draft. Emory Jones as a 3rd-round selection. So this is some really good football players that LSU's really going to miss in 2025. A thing that's going to help LSU, though, in 2025 is they get their coordinators, their offense and defensive coordinator coming back. You've got Joe Sloan on the offensive side. He's back. That's going to be nothing but helping Garrett Nussmeier. He doesn't have to learn a new offense. He's already familiar with this offense. And, last year was his first year in that offense. So I think he will only be better this year. In that offense. Defensively, Blake Baker comes back. He's a good defensive coordinator. He was at Missouri a couple years ago. They had an elite defense, and I think the defense in 2025 for LSU is going to be pretty solid. One thing that really stood out to me also about LSU is they had the number 1 transfer portal class in the country, at least according to On3. Man, they really, I think, did a great job at going at their weak spots and getting some guys that can immediately play and immediately help them. I talked to you about the offensive line, losing a lot of people. Well, they went out here, got Josh Thompson from Northwestern. My Tennessee Vols were in the mix with him. We were actually in the lead. LSU stole him. That was a huge pickup from LSU because I think he was the best tackle in the transfer portal available. So that's a huge pickup to somebody that can, basically protect Garrett Nussmeier's blind spot. And some areas that I thought they really, really did a good job in that transfer portal: defensive line, secondary, the wide receiver room. They did a really good job at making sure this team was going to have more depth and better in 2025. Another thing that I think is flying under the radar on this team is, Garrett Nussmeier gets hurt. They're in bad shape, don't get me wrong. But they went out and got Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State, a guy who played pretty darn good for Mississippi State. Mississippi State was not a good football team, but this guy threw for almost 2,000 yards. He has a whole SEC, season under his belt, and that is a good insurance policy to have if Garrett Nussmeier does miss any time or goes down for the season. But anyway, we've talked enough about LSU, what's happened in the offseason, kind of what their position groups look like in some regard. Let's talk about the schedule. So they open up in Death Valley, the other Death Valley, Clemson, and Clemson's going to be a pretty darn good football team. I think most publications have them as a top 5 team, and Clemson's going to be pretty darn good. Clay Klubnik really took a step forward last year. Played much, much better than he had done in the prior 2 seasons. He has a good wide receiver room coming back for him. I think he has got a really good year ahead of him in 2025. Clemson is my pick by far to win the ACC. I think they're head and shoulders above anybody, and it's going to be tough to keep them from winning the ACC. This game here, I'm going with Clemson because it's at Clemson. It's a 7:30 kickoff. And here's the thing. Les Miles has lost the last 5 opening games from 2000. Well, not Les Miles. LSU has lost the last 5. Brian Kelly has lost the last 3. But it's not all LSU's fault either, right? They're not picking, the LSU school for the blind. They're picking Florida State. They're picking USC. They're picking really good teams to play in the first game of the year. And I just think that it being at Clemson, I think Clemson edges them out. But it wouldn't surprise me if LSU wins this game because I am high on LSU this year. And they are very talented, and I think they can go in there and win that game. But anyway, I do have Clemson winning a close game at home. So I do think, again, for the 6th straight year, I think you open up the season 0-1. Then you play Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech's not any good. That's an easy win. That's a no-brainer. Florida, a team that you lost to in the 3rd game of the year. You play them at home. I think you get revenge. You better be careful, though, because I really do think Florida's getting better. DJ Lagway is a promising QB. I think they have grown. They got more depth. They're a better overall quality football team. They're than 3 or 4 years ago. They're leaps and bounds better. So if you are sleeping on Florida, Florida can definitely beat you. But I don't think going to Death Valley, they beat you last year. I don't see any way they slip up and get you. LSU or Florida will have LSU's full attention. And I expect LSU to win that game. You're 2-1. Then you play Southeast Louisiana University. That's an FCS team. Like I said, FCS team, enough said. Should win that one rather easily. You're 3-1. Then you got to go to Ole Miss. Okay, Ole Miss is really they're going to miss Jackson Dart and a couple of those receivers that are gone. But Ole Miss is still very talented, especially on the defensive side of the football. And you got Lane Kiffin on the offensive side, so they're still going to be very, very tough. If this game would have been maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier in the year, I would probably pick LSU to win, but for the fact that Austin Simmons, who's a very talented QB for Ole Miss, I think he's going to have just enough time to get acclimated to that offense, and I think it being at Ole Miss, I think they get you, especially after you all beat them last year, kind of derailed their playoff hopes. I think Ole Miss will get you at home, but again, that's a coin flip type game. LSU could definitely win that, but you get a bye week. Then you play a South Carolina team that a lot of people are picking to go to the playoffs. Lenora Sellers, they got a really good defense coming back still. They do miss some pieces on that team, but still a good defense. Nick Harbor. South Carolina's going to be a good football team, but you get a bye week. They're coming to Death Valley. You're coming off a loss. I don't see any way that South Carolina is going to lose that with all those things put into that. I think you win that game. And so then you go to the 7th game of the year. You're playing Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt played you all really tough last year. You only won by, I think 1 TD. Diego Pavia, I think he was giving you all kind of fits, running around there making some plays. But I think Vanderbilt takes a step back this year. It's just really hard for them to kind of keep up with all these teams with this NIL money. Vanderbilt slipped up on a lot of people last year, but this year they've got everybody's full attention, and I think they are going to regress a little bit. But Vandy's still a dangerous team, but I think you get that win. Then you got A&M coming. And A&M beat you last year because you didn't show up after halftime. LSU didn't even come out of the locker room. A&M routed them at home last year. Marcel Reed had a field day with that little QB read play, and LSU just didn't know what to do. But I think you get revenge this year. Like I said, that's going to be on LSU's mind. A&M is going to be a quality team, probably a 9 or 10 win team themselves, 8 to 10 win team. But they're going to be a quality team. But I think it being at LSU, revenge factor, I think you get that win. Then you got a bye week, okay? And you're going to play Alabama in Tuscaloosa. This is a team that's beat you two years in a row, okay? I was really surprised how thoroughly they dominated that game last year at LSU. But I think Alabama's going to be even a little bit better this year. Kalen DeBoer in his second year, I think he's got a quarterback in Ty Simpson that fits what he wants to do more. Ryan Williams is back. He's a top 3 wide receiver in the country. He's a nightmare to try to cover. They're going to be solid, Alabama, all around, offense and defensively. That game being in Tuscaloosa. Now, here's the thing. LSU's coming off a bye week, but Alabama's coming off a bye week too, so they're going to be rested and ready as well. I think Alabama gets you, but that's going to be a really good game. But the next week you get Arkansas. I think you bounce back. I really think this is Sam Pittman's last year at Arkansas. I think he's a dead man walking. I was really surprised they gave him another year, honestly, this year. But I think you win that game pretty easily. And then you got Western Kentucky, a team that last year went 8-6, 6-2 in their conference. They're a Conference USA team. They're not awful. Coached by Tyson Helton. They can really throw the football around and all that good stuff. So they're not a FCS scrub team. You got to take them serious. But LSU should not slip up in that game. I think they should take care of business. So at this point, you've got 3 losses, and you're going to close the year out against Oklahoma. Now, this is a real coin flip game. Oklahoma is going to be better this year, okay? They're bringing in the QB from Washington State, and then his offensive coordinator has followed him, so he knows that offense. I think Oklahoma is going to be tough on defense, just like they were last year. Maybe not quite as good, but offensively, I think they're going to be much better. And I think Oklahoma is going to be tough to beat, much tougher to beat this year than they were last year. But I think, if LSU just wins 8 games this year, Brian Kelly's fired. I think they have to win this game if Brian Kelly wants to keep his job. I like, when it comes down to the QB position, Garrett Nussmeier is better than their QB. I think that LSU is a better overall team, even though this is at Oklahoma. I think LSU goes in there, gets a big win, finishes 9-3, and a very tough schedule. And, I don't know if LSU fans will be happy with 9-3, but that's far from a bad season, especially considering the schedule you played. I do not know if that's good enough to get into the playoffs. I know, this past season, there were some 3-win teams that I think got in. I think Clemson was one of them. If you win your conference, you get in. So I don't know if they can get in the playoffs or not with 3 wins. But anyway, I think you finish the season 9-3, and I think you're going to have a really good offense. I think defensively you take a step forward. You're a top 50 defense at the very minimum. I think the run game will be better, and I think you're going to be more balanced. You may not have to throw for over 4,000 yards like you did last year, but I think the run game mixed with the pass game will make the offense better this year. So anyway, that's my preview and prediction for the LSU Tigers in 2025. And guys, I will talk to y'all soon. Thank you for tuning in.